Okay, yeah, we'll start an important footing, bearing in mind we've got positives, we've got training grounds being closed, we've got postponements. What's the situation at Burnley? Is everything all right?
We have got a couple of cases which will affect us over the coming days. I think the thing that people might be, don't get me wrong, they probably are in the knowledge actually, is it's not just having one individual case, don't forget, it's having a case and then the people around that case who therefore then have to shut down. Then the knock-on effect of that is when a game comes around, they might not have trained for 7 to 10 days without any symptoms. So, excuse me. It's a tough challenge for all. Certainly, it would affect us with the injuries as well. We haven't had too many cases, but we have had them, and we've got some at the moment. So we're having to be wise. We're having to repod the players, push the rules as hard as we can, on a common sense basis to stop any future trouble, of course.
And I imagine there's a not knowing because you're trying to do things and trying to work out who they've been in contact with in amongst your playing staff and your staff.
Well, exactly. And the worry for us across the sport, I'm sure, not just us, but I can only give you my take on it, is the knock-on effect. So every time if you lock down sort of 5 or 6 players waiting for the next retest, then they get retested, that's still not enough because of the window they say that you can carry it. So then you have to wait for a second retest. By the time the second retest comes around, they haven't trained. Well, if that happens 3 or 4 times over 3 or 4 weeks, by the time the next game comes around, let's imagine in 3 weeks' time, you might be putting out a team who's only trained a handful of days in 3 weeks, and that then affects the competitive element of the league and the sport in general. So I think for me, look, it's a view. I'm not saying it's the view, but it's my view. I think vaccination is the way forward throughout football. I can only talk for the Premier League because I'm in the Premier League, but I think it'd be good for football. The reason for that, by the way, before, I appreciate some people would be surprised by that comment, but if you allow me the chance, if you think about it rationally, we're all going to get vaccinated. Everyone wanted football back, including ourselves, of course. Or not everyone, a lot of people wanted football back. We went through all the welfare of football back through a screen for a lot of football fans and sports fans. The cash it generates through tax, the well-being of what the players do many times, and it's been seen. The obvious, most high-profile one is Marcus Rashford and what he achieved. There's a lot of good come through football. So I think if you think of the idea of the amount of vaccinations across the country, the amount that would be needed in football, but the biggest thing for me is the balance. And the balance would be, and this is only theoretical, by the way, it's just a view, the amount of money being spent on testing in the Premier League, I can't speak for the other divisions, if that money was therefore channeled back into the NHS and into the vaccination system, surely that's a better place to be than it is just continuing testing a load of footballers 2, 3, 4 times a week. So in lieu of the cost of vaccinations is my point. It's there to be looked at. It's there to be viewed. I appreciate there'll be some people who say, why should footballers get vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera. But if the payback to the system is in advance, well in advance, I imagine it would be, then, for argument's sake, if there's 20 Premier League clubs and there's 100 tests a club, 100 vaccinations, a club, let's say, I would imagine the payback to the system, the NHS and the vaccination system financially would be considerable in lieu of then, I'm no scientist, but I'm told if you've been vaccinated, you don't need to keep testing. So therefore, if the testing diminishes, that money could be used for a much better cause, in my opinion. And therefore, football stays a competitive industry rather than what might end up being a skewed industry because of players missing from games. And I just think it's a commonsensical view. I appreciate there'll be people who disagree with me probably wholeheartedly. But I just think the balance of getting some vaccinations quicker throughout football, the payback would be enormous in comparison, whether it's financial or the push in finance to go into the system and therefore help encourage more people to be trained or whatever's needed to get the vaccination out there quicker for the greater good of the country.
You've clearly thought about it a lot, and you kind of recognise the counter-argument here is that people will talk about the vulnerable, they'll talk about the healthcare workers being more of a priority.
No, let me make it clear. I'm well aware there's people way in front of football. What I'm saying is if the finance that's just on a logical view, if the money that's being put into testing in football, I've been told is a lot, by the way, a lot of money. Therefore, the vaccination is, I imagine, I don't know, but very, very low cost in comparison to the testing. What I'm saying is that money could therefore, imaginary, obviously I don't know what the logistical nightmare it must be, but could therefore be put back into the system to encourage the people who are on the front line to get more vaccinations, to actually, add into the process of getting the people who are really vulnerable, especially the NHS, who have done marvellous through this whole situation. I think we've all become fans of that, and probably we should have all been fans of the NHS, by the way. And I think that would rubber stamp the good that football does yet again, in lieu of the price of, not the physical price, sorry, I can only speak for the Premier League, let's call it 2,000 vaccinations. I'm not remotely suggesting that should be put in front of the welfare of the people who are very vulnerable. Of course, I'm not including the NHS workers as mentioned, including the elderly. Of course, I'm not mentioning that. What I'm saying is there a timeline where it can fast track to that period? Because logically, it would be more good putting the funding that is put into testing into the system, I feel, to encourage more vaccinations or more chance of vaccination or more speed in the vaccination programme. That money could be used more wisely, I would suggest, to get it out there quicker to the vulnerable and beyond, so that the country gets better quicker, in theory. I don't know the science, by the way. I'm just giving a view as I see it.
But in the meantime, I guess you'd welcome further testing in the EFL, bearing in mind you're playing a team this weekend from the EFL who haven't had the same testing as you've kind of enjoyed over the last 6-7 months.
No, but I think the thing with testing is, I must say, I can only mention the Premier League. I don't know all the guidelines for the EFL and what they're trying to achieve there. The Premier League guidelines have been excellent. I think we've tried to adhere by them. We are distanced. We're training pods. We are packed lunches. We've gone back to almost square one where we were when we restarted in March. So we're trying to work with them guidelines. We're trying to do the best we can. The point is that we're still getting positives because, as everyone knows, it's growing, it's spreading. More testing probably as well plays its part. The fact that more tests are showing up as positive. The EFL are having their challenges. I only know a few of the stories, but teams talking about putting out, all kinds of sides because of the COVID situation. I just think we've got to be careful to not going beyond the obvious, which you rightly so pointed out, the people who really need to be taken care of straight away, of course. If we take that element away, I just think we've got to be careful with the sport because it's not beyond anyone's health, quite obviously. But the competitive nature of the game will diminish if teams are losing 5, 6, 7 players at a time. It's quite obvious. And that would skew possible outcomes of a whole season's work. But I must reiterate, because it's important you brought it up, I'm not remotely trying to step in front of the key workers, the essential people who need vaccination. Let me be really clear about that. I'm just suggesting if there is a window to fast track through football to get it back to being fully competitive on an even playing field, in theory, very few cases, or hopefully the vaccination would suggest no cases, therefore, moving forwards. I just think you'd keep football on the TV, you'd keep it in a really tough period again, where we're all locking down again. I just think people wanted it in the first place. The Premier League and all the EFL clubs have done great to get it back out there. I just think we're going into that dangerous moment of how many games need to be called off before it's time to lock down again. And it's no one's fault, by the way, of course. I'm just trying to think logically of a possible, by the way, thought process to find a way through it.
Have you got any concerns about this weekend's game or the game against Manchester United, for example?
Well, we're certainly looking at this week's game. We're affected already. We've got to look at that effect on the knock-on, as I suggested, to do the right things with the people who are around that player at any given time. The retesting schedule, of course, and we add in tests, of course, but there still are protocols that we have to follow. It's probable that it affects the next 2 games. We get retested again on Friday after just having a retest on Tuesday. So we're going to have to see what the next round brings. But it is probable that it will have an effect on us.
And in terms of injuries, any brighter news there?
Well, Corky steps in again to add to his training sort of recovery. He's played a couple of games now. We're unfortunate we had to cancel a game on Tuesday, actually, because of what we're talking about. A reserve game, obviously. So he's making progress. Charlie Taylor's making progress. Dwight McNeil's making progress. They're on the grass actively, but with the sports science team, not with us training. But they're making good progress, as is Jay Rodriguez. Matej Vidra has been training with us, so he's back and available at the moment. So we are beginning to show signs once again. Don't want to say too much, but once again, we're showing signs of getting people back fit again.
I got to say, when I thought about talking to you today, I thought we'd all be happy about a takeover. It's going to be overshadowed by COVID, but I mean, clearly the chairman, the new owner, spoke about what he had with you. He thought it went well.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to finish the COVID thing, I don't think it's overshadowed. I just think it's a very serious topic. We all know that, and it's a big topic in football at the moment and in life, obviously. I'm trying to share a view on my life in football rather than my life with my family. Behind that, the idea with the new owners, I met with them on a Zoom call. Obviously, they're being careful as well and being tested and repeat tested, etc. We had a good chat on a Zoom call, very open, honest discussion and debate on what we think is appropriate. I don't think there's too many things that are beyond the norms of the right running of the club. I don't get the impression that it's just going to be throw money everywhere, although I think there will be some finance to possibly use going forwards. I think the idea is, the impression I get, and it's a strong impression, is to build on the good work that's been done, to continue the building process, and not try and cheat the system by throwing money at it everywhere. But we'll see. We'll see what finance comes available. There was no agreement on that. It was more about the welfare of the club, what it is. They're learning about what the club is. They're learning about what the area is. Very tough at the minute for them, to be fair, with what's going on. But yeah, so it was a very open, honest debate on what we think the club is now and what the idea is to move it forwards.
I'm just wondering whether, with COVID and everything that's going on, whether the market is even tougher than it's ever been anyway.
Well, we'll see. I mean, as you're rightly suggesting, or at the beginning, what we were talking about, forgetting about the ins and outs of vaccinations and testing, there are teams being heavily affected. That means that the market might skew. We don't know who'd be available. And I mean, it could be as far as, is someone tested, positive right when they're getting a move? I don't even know how the physicality of that moment is. Physically, you've got to remember, if you were spending good money on a player, they've got to have a medical. It's very difficult, in my experience, to do a medical without some kind of hands-on moment in time. I don't know what their idea of that would be, but we come through the last window, but obviously the numbers weren't as big then, so we'll have to wait and see on that, what the protocols are and what the guidelines are for if that extreme moment does occur.
But with a fair wind, do you think maybe a couple of bodies in? Is that what you're kind of looking
at?
No,
I don't think it's with a fair wind. I think nothing's changed on my words from before the window and before the takeover, is that January is a very, very tough window. Not many want to lose their players. The odd time you get someone in at a club that might be ready to, lose a player or sell a player, whichever way you look at it. Not many in my experience. It's always a tough window, whether you've got money or not. I think it's a tough window. So we will wait and see. There's a couple of things we've talked about and possible options, so we will wait and see. But I'm not banking on it. I'm just maybe looking at it, I think, is a better way of putting it. Doing all our homework, being diligent, and seeing if the moment can arise when we can do something.
But on the other side of things, keeping hold of what you've got as well in terms of numbers, because you've not got a great deal of numbers. You're not going to be welcoming people coming to your players, are you?
No, that's very important. We have got stronger with that down the years, and we were strong in the last window with making sure that key players stayed here. If it arises again, then we'd look to be strong again. I certainly don't think that will change. We want to be trying to build. And if you're trying to build, you want your best players and the players that historically and statistically are very strong players for us. You want them in your building.
I think we ask you this every year, where the FA Cup lies in your priority list. And I think you probably say the same thing. It's again, you'd like to win, but there are other things to try.
Well, the problem is I've been here 8 years, so it is the same story. And you ask me, and I tell you where it lives, and I tell you my joy of my time now. I tell you that it still has its place. I tell you it's not as rewarding financially to the club as the Premier League. It's a logical view. It doesn't take away my emotion towards winning a game or the FA Cup. Of course it doesn't, but it's just a factual, logical view. So I've always tried to share the honest view of it. It still counts. It just doesn't count in the sense of the running of the football club, but it still counts emotionally with what the FA Cup is and what it stands for.
But I guess it also allows you a chance to build on some momentum as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're in good shape that sense. We were very disappointed. The reasons are valid, obviously, but we're very disappointed to lose the Fulham game because we're in good shape and delivering good performances and good points return. Cup does offer something different, but it's still another game that we want to win. And then pretty lively schedule after that. Actually, it is one of them. Ironically, the other thing I suppose we didn't mention about the COVID situation is there's a lot of noise made, rightly so sometimes, about the health and well-being of players and the too many games. Well, equally, it doesn't really make sense if you think about it. If you've got 4 or 5 players who have locked down for a week and then they get cleared, but they've hardly trained, and then put them back into back-to-back Premier League games. So that doesn't really make sense in that thinking either. Small thing, but it's still a valid thing, I think.
A final point from me, because I've hogged your time. I know about 4 or 5 years ago there was some conjecture in East Anglia. I'm from East Anglia. That you tried to sign Russell Martin to Burnley. Was that true?
No, like many other of the rumours, I think about the strike rate of the truth is about 1 in 4,000. I think rumours to actual facts of what's occurred since I've been at Burnley. But no, that's another one that wasn't true.
Thank you. Nice speaking to you. Cheers.
Thank you.
I was going to ask a COVID question, actually. Specifically with the FA Cup, are you clear on the rules with the COVID positives? Because there are some teams who are playing with their under-23s and under-18s because their first team are self-isolating. There are some games that are going ahead, and there are some that are as yet unclear. Do you know what the implications of positive tests are potentially for this FA Cup tie?
I don't know all the minutiae of it. I know the general rule of thumb. I think it's getting 14 players out there to be active, or that's what I was told. And take on the game. We'd like to fulfil that, that's for sure. At this stage, I think we will be fulfilling that. It might not be the 14 that you're always expecting to see, but I think we can go beyond 14. Certainly today, I can only ask and answer, with the group that I've worked with today. I will certainly prefer fulfilling the right team to go and take on the task of beating MK Dons as I sit here now, giving you that information.
I guess the last thing you would want with the schedule you've got is for a game to be moved or rescheduled or postponed or whatever the protocols will be.
Well, the next run of games is busy anyway, so I think whatever happens, if it has to happen, it has to happen. If it gets changed, it gets changed. I've always said whatever the fixture list throws up, we get on with it. We still do. I've never changed my mindset on that. When we came out of lockdown in March, we got on with I think it was 9 games in something like 6. I think it was around 6 weeks. We got on with that period. There is another period, not quite that, but a very busy period coming up. If games get, shelved and they have to be moved, that's the way it is. And we certainly can't, as it was mentioned earlier, I'm certainly not putting football in front of the health of a nation, that's for sure. So we'll just have to, deal with everything as it comes.
In terms of the squad, did earlier in the season in the League Cup, when you were really short of numbers and under-23s players came in and did really well in those games, Sheffield United, Millwall, are you in a stronger position with that age group of players now, that they are able to step in to a game against a team in a cup competition like you did in the League Cup?
Well, what it is, they've had more experience of training with us as a group. They've had more experience, particularly if you look at Benno, Josh Benson, because he's physically been on the pitch more. And I think they've been around it more. They've been around the group more. They've been on the bench. They've been getting on the field. So I think they move forward in that respect. A bit more experience, a bit more of that thing that comes with playing first team games. Just that inner belief, and that's just that tiny touch of arrogance that you need to make sure you've got the belief in yourself to go out and perform. I think that grows in a way that when you are there performing and you are playing, high level football matches, I think it just grows. So I think we're slightly better off in that respect. And some of the younger players have been training with us on a constant basis as well. And I think that's good for their development.
Because you've had to use them, haven't you, at times? There've been no alternative with the number that you've had missing. Has it been kind of necessity's the mother of invention? Yeah,
well, I think sometimes by default rather than design, but that's not such a bad thing. That still gives them the opportunity. And it's still, you do get surprise packages come out of them situations sometimes when, we trust and believe in all the players here. And now and again, the ones who you think might not be able to do it, do. And the ones that you think would probably be comfortable find it tough, and they're the surprises you sometimes get. With our group, I don't think there's been major surprises in the sense that I think we believe in the players that have mainly been around us. You look at Josh Benson, you look at Bobby Thomas. You look at, obviously Dunny's a bit more in advance of them. Gleno and people like this. Joel's got a little kind of caveat, cameo here and there, got on the bench and things like that. So, there's a few good signs from them players, and more around that. So, but they are signs that, that you're not got a full career because you have 1 or 2 games or 1 or 2 games on the bench, but it's fair to say that I think they're growing, I think they're maturing, and they're beginning to believe more. And belief in football is a massive, massive weapon to have in your locker.
Just on the takeover situation, you've already been pretty clear that you don't expect to be signing rafts of players, if any, in this transfer window, and that things haven't massively changed. Supporters, understandably, will be excited about a new era and a new start. The chairman's come out and talked about you being integral to his plans and how he's had really encouraging conversations with you. Do you think that supporters are kind of entitled to be excited about the idea of you being able to go forward with a new backer and a new ownership at the club?
Well, just to be clear, I think it's important to remind yourself of my words. Not massively changed doesn't suggest it won't do in the future. I'm saying at this moment in time, I've got to be, just to be clear on that, we've had one chat on a Zoom call. I mean, that, it's not going to change the whole way that Burnley Football Club looks at itself or they look at it as a concern. So I'm saying it's not massive change at the moment. It's hard to instigate big change. The obvious change people talk about is finance. Are we going to spend money? Are we going to put money in? Are we going to sign players? I'm just trying to be balanced to it. Whether you got money or not got money, January is a tough window anyway, on that level. The idea of massive changes in the future, well, let's wait and see, including myself. The idea of speaking to me being here long term, I've got 18 months to go on my contract, very early in the new ownership to even worry about that, so I'm not, and I'm sure they're not. They're looking at the instant moment in time, which is the playing squad, making sure we look after the players that we want to keep, making sure that we're aligning the next level of player that we can bring in, etc., etc. And beyond that, of course, there will be discussions on the bigger picture of the football club and how that moves forward. But they're not naive. They know the immediacy is the next window, what the team's actively doing at this stage. And even the consideration of COVID, it's a worldwide thing. They know about that as well and how that could affect our squad. So, yeah, there's a lot in the melting pot at the moment.
And I know game-wise, you've got your analysts and you yourself do lots of work looking at the opponents and how you're going to approach a game. There'll be lots of talk about teams playing each other from different levels in the FA Cup this weekend. Practically, how big is the difference? How big is the gulf between the Premier League and the lower divisions of the Football League as you're going to face this weekend?
Well, I think it's got bigger over the years, but that doesn't stop the results from happening. It doesn't stop the magic of the cup, as everyone used to call it. Well, they still do call it. It doesn't stop them things from happening. The mindset of any given day, the right performance from yourselves, a soft performance and the other team play well, all them things can factor in. So I think the Premier League has shifted again over the last, we've been in it, 6 out of the last 7 years. I think it's shifted over certainly the last 3 to 4 years. I think it's shifted again. And it just keeps creeping away from the other divisions. But mainly, let's have it right, that's mainly due to finance. The Championship has found itself in a tough spell the last couple of seasons with financial fair play and the balance of finance in that division. So therefore, teams have often got younger and trying to promote younger players, which is actually good for the game, but it sometimes is not good for the fact that the gap between the Premier League and the other division does grow a little bit. But it's happened, I wouldn't say year on year, but I think there's spells when it just creeps again, and I think it has crept forward over the last 2, 3, maybe 4 years.
Do you have to be as wary and as aware of the threats that MK Dons pose as Man United in your next Premier League game? Is that all part of your professional preparation?
We take every game as the next one that's the most important. I've said that for many years here, and we do it diligently, we do it wisely. We've had them watched physically twice because our scouts are still allowed to watch games. Obviously, we're one scout, so we've had them physically watched twice. We've had the report on that. We've done the analysis through the screen. All the things that we think is right and proper to play anyone. And it's right for us as well to do that properly with the players. So we'll be running through the format that we've come to believe in, the format that serves us well, and making sure the players are aware of the opposition, whilst equally making them aware of the things that we think we can do to take on the game and win it. So, we were treating this game just as important as the next Premier League game.
From the Elephant Man, I thank you.
It's a fair one.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks so much. Moving on, Alex James, thanks for live. Alex.
Thanks, Pete. Hi, Sean.
Alex.
Just on the COVID one, just one on that from me. Is there any concern from the players or you guys as a club and a staff about, on a human level, about carrying on in the environment that we're in and whether football might need to take a little rain check, or is that just impossible to do with the schedule?
I don't really understand. Sorry, I don't really understand your question. What do you mean from a human level?
Well, as in, yes, they want to play football, but maybe they're putting themselves, maybe it's a risk that doesn't need taking, as it was last March.
I wouldn't imagine they're too worried about that. Certainly no one's come to me and mentioned about it. They'd obviously have a view of the greater good of the country and the world. Everyone does have a view on that. But the professional side of things, the protocols that have been put in place, the testing program that's put in place, I think they're well aware. I think all of the country should at this stage be well aware after months of hearing the messages and the months of trying to do the right thing. There's been a few slip-ups in football, but I can assure you, for every big story about a slip-up in football for a player or whatever, there's lots out there in normal life of them slip-ups as well. It just gets, put in the papers more because they're footballers. And I think there is a human moment when that can happen, unfortunately. But beyond that, I think all of our players are trying to do the right thing, look after themselves, use the basic principles. All of the safeguards at the training ground, as I suggested, have been enhanced once again. We've gone back into pods rather than sharing change or small pods in smaller changing rooms, bigger changing rooms, rather than having lots of bodies in a changing room. Our staff meetings are now in the analytics room, which is big enough for 60 people, and there's like 7 of us in there. So we are trying to do everything we can to play our part, I can assure you. And that's all we can ask of the players. When they go out of this building, they're their own people. They'll make decisions, rightly or wrongly, they will make decisions, but they've certainly got the information to hand.
And just on the takeover, when you chatted with Alan, how did you view him as a person? How did you feel that conversation went? Was it sort of both parties on similar pages in what you see as the future for Burnley on and off the pitch?
Yeah, I mean, as a person, I don't know yet. I've met him through a Zoom screen. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's not the perfect moment of meeting someone, I wouldn't suggest. But he seems an affable fella. He seems open-minded. He seems like he wants us to be given the freedom to work and operate, while still understanding that the club is, I don't think their idea of is rip it up and start again. I think their idea is to really get their teeth into what's here and then how many different ways they can move it forward, both on and off the pitch. I think that's their view and that's their thinking, while still understanding or beginning and learning to understand the fabric of the club and the kind of feel of the area and the people. I think, they are moving into the area, and really getting into what the club is. So we'll see over time about personal relationships, and professional relationships for that matter. But they grow over time. They're not through a Zoom screen and an instant basis, I can assure you.
Yeah, I guess that goes back to what you were saying then, that nothing's going to change instantly you're not suddenly going to go out and spend loads of money and you're not suddenly going to rip up what's been really successful for you so far.
There's in-house changes very quickly. Viewpoints are shared. The open environment that they want us to work with, the open exchange of information, they're things that have already just begun to show themselves. But the obvious changes to the outside world is usually, let's face it, is money getting put in? Are we signing players? Are we building stands? Are we doing whatever? That's the outside view. That's the obvious outside view because it's a physical moment. But there's plenty of dialogue between us. Not just me and Alan, obviously, the people involved in purchasing the club, also the other members around the club, the key members, whether it be Mike Rigg, whether it be Neil Hart, whether it be Matt Williams. There's a lot of people involved in this starting process of working each other out, working what the club is and working what they want from it going forward.
And last one from me, just on the injuries, you mentioned a few players back out on the grass. I don't think you mentioned Johan. Have any of those got a chance for Saturday or Tuesday, or do you think it's a bit long?
Once again, you are correct. We've had that many injuries. I do tend to miss 1 or 2 off at times. Johan's made good progress. Johan's been, thank you. I should bring a pad, actually. Johan's making really good progress. He has been training. As I said to you, it wasn't that he was injured. We just felt that he needed to get back to that. It's hard to explain, but when you're just training and playing naturally, you're not overthinking anything, you're not overthinking certainly your body, you're just going out and training. He looks a lot better with that. He has had a couple of reserve games and he's certainly in contention in our thinking at the moment.
The rest of them, it's unlikely then, likes of Corky, Dwight, for Saturday or Tuesday. I think it might be a little bit longer just to give them that extra time.
No, Corky's in and around the group. Dwight, Charlie, that's a different thing, and J-Rod, they're maybe ones that we've got to make a judgment call on. But no, Cork is definitely in and around the thinking, as is Vids, who's just come back, as is Yohan.
Great. Thanks, Sean. All the best for the weekend.
Thank you.